So, some of you guys may remember the video where I designed a drug smuggling aircraft with weapons in order to conduct piracy operations in the more lawless areas of the late 60s. If not, you can find that right here, in the top left, top right, wherever the little pop-up is. In the wonderful collaboration between the drug overlords and Lockheed Martin, we created this. A lightweight, heavily modified aircraft in which lightweight drug smuggling operations could be run from. Its S-tall airframe, large tires, and concealed weapons allowed for complete aerial defense against pilots from other cartels, as well as some limited protection from Coast Guard vehicles. On top of that, it could land in very short spaces and take off in relatively short spaces, in turn allowing it to land at smaller airfields that could go undetected by police departments, especially if a country doesn't have the funding. But this begs the question, what would the Coast Guard be flying to deal with these drug smugglers? Now before I answer that, I want to tell you guys that the technologies I will be referring to, take it with a grain of salt. This video is basically completely for fun. Also, I can't actually complete a lot of it in Flyout, but I like to imagine what such a vehicle might actually look like. It's sort of like our little airplane of the imagination here. This is simply a projection of what it could look like if these technologies did exist, but I can't really implement those in Flyout, now can I? Maybe if multiplayer comes and we can get bigger vehicles and formations or something like that, we could try it, but that's the closest we're gonna get. Then again, I do a lot of imaginary stuff. I think one of the larger things about my channel is the imagination and hopefully the creativity, so I don't just make a plane or something like that. I sort of give it my own wild and wacky purposes, and that's more or less what this is. But on to the question, how would they deal with drug smugglers anyways, these theoretical imaginary coast guards? Surely they would need their own vehicles to destroy these drug smuggling craft. Now part 3 I need to make another vehicle, but before I get too ahead of myself with what I'll be doing in the future, let me explain my idea. You see, the tricky part about the Coast Guard, or Land Guard? National Guard? I don't know. Well, the tricky part about their job is that they will be eliminating these aircraft over civilian territory. This means a massive risk for collateral damage. In order to solve this, if the pilots of the other craft don't want to cooperate, we need a way of removing them from the sky without collateral damage, which is very difficult. Now, there are a few ways you can approach this. First idea, chase them out over the ocean and shoot them down there. Second idea, wait for them to land and arrest them there. The next ideas are a little bit more absurd, but I thought it would be a far more entertaining concept. Because obviously, chasing them over the ocean or waiting for them to land isn't perfect. There are some pretty big problems with this concept. They may fly into another country's territory, and if you're not perfectly allied with them, it could become a complete political storm of BS in an instant's time. Next, since these theoretical drug syndicates are so massive enough to have their own missiles and aircraft, if you go over the ocean, they could have buddies over there and your pilots could be at a pretty big risk of getting shot down. Then again, if there was a drug smuggling syndicate this big in real life, I feel like it would be like national alert across the world. So we're gonna need some pretty serious defense and probably some pretty serious funding into some countries to take care of it. Because if you remember from the video, basically the idea is that there are literally so many aerospace manufacturers out there and so much competition that even if you're a drug smuggling company, even if that's what you do, you still, if you have money, you can get an airframe or even potentially weapons from these guys. It's basically a complete, like, corporate dystopia where all morals have gone away in the name of competition. So, you know, when you get to this point of these syndicates having, I don't know, a libertarian's wet dream of an arsenal of AIM-9s and rocket pods and bombs, it can become a serious national security threat, can't it? Well, hey, you know what? That's what this place gets for half the countries being a lawless wasteland. You know, yeah, these drug smuggling kingpins basically have their gracious aerospace beneficiaries, aka, you know, missiles and bombs and all that, and even airframes. So the question, once again, is how do we take out these aircraft over the mainland without causing any collateral damage? The answer is arguably one of the more absurd ideas I have ever had. Actually, scratch that, probably the most absurd set of ideas I've ever had. And just about all of them involve harpoons. So, idea number 1. Using a harpoon gun or any type of modified cannons, a drag parachute can be launched out of an airborne weapon. This harpoon will then attach itself to the fuselage of the aircraft, and with 2 or 3 of them, any smaller aircraft can be knocked out of the sky with these parachutes. Simple solution, right? Not so much. If you deploy these parachutes over a residential area, your suspect aircraft can still fall onto people or crash or you know, cause unexpected casualties, any of that. So there is just about no way to remove this plane from the sky without physically and manually adjusting its course. So here comes answer number 2. If you attach your plane to an aircraft through a cable or harpoon or a little attachment dock, little gripper, I don't know, you can manually adjust the course of the aircraft yourself if it were a bigger plane. A smaller plane, you could just get a big guy to rip it out of the sky or have special forces or something. For the bigger planes, however, you'd need a small squadron of these guys. By attaching an aircraft under every crucial control point of a larger craft, you could effectively plant these parachutes and alter its course entirely under control of an extraordinary and coordinated group of Special Forces pilots. The Special Forces will belong to a country known as the LSR as a part of their Special Aviation Operatives program in order to clean up the airspace from all these corpos and kingpins over their country's airspace doing illegal activities. Man, this whole prop punk thing that I mentioned, it's got some pretty fun dystopian aspects I can foresee in the future with this nonsense, but first, prop punk needs a better name. For those of you who don't know, this is basically my little fictional universe that I'm working on with all you guys in my server. I do need a name that rolls off the tongue a little bit easier though. Tell me what you think in the comments below. My favorite might just get their name on the wiki page we're making. Did I mention that, by the way? We are working on a full wiki page as well as a high-res map, economy bot, tech tree, all sorts of lore for our fantasy universe for you guys, as well as having a few more land grabs for aspiring countries. If you're still interested in joining in, now is definitely the time to do it, just before the reset's complete. We'll have a lot easier access to information, companies, design requirements, all that jazz soon to come. But just so you know, a huge round of applause to some of the mods because they have been working very hard on it. And for those of you who want to know more about this sort of thing, don't worry, I'm going to have some videos out there soon. Like when last things last, when Flyout multiplayer or replay editor or anything like that becomes a thing in the not so near future of the game, I plan on making a cinematic miniseries to follow the events of this fictional world. So, once again, if you'd like to participate, feel free to join my server in the link below, but if not, feel free to watch some hopefully pretty awesome cinematic videos in the near future. Also, this is my last video I'll be working on before college starts up. Actually, by the time I'm getting it out to you guys, which is today, I'm working on this on Tuesday, I've already gone to my first classes. Pretty exciting, pretty nervous as well about the rest of my school, but I'll make sure to keep posting. You're not getting rid of me that easily. Maybe vids will go down to 1 or 2 a week tops, but I'll still be here posting like before. I also have a few projects on the burner that I'll need to finish for you guys, so hopefully I'll keep y'all interested in the meantime with some new fun, completely wacky ideas like this one. But getting back on topic of the airplane, it's a little bit out of the question, but how does my design reflect the idea of these aggressive aerial tugboats that forcibly divert the course of an aircraft? Well, it's simple. I'm basically building a ramming aircraft. The very first part of the design that allows for this is the unique wing and propeller shaping. The flying buttress shape of the wings and the root allows me to place the counter-rotating propeller in the middle of the aircraft. This, along with structural reinforcement around the wing, allows for the aircraft to come into contact with the suspect aircraft to divert its course. You don't see it in the time-lapse, but eventually a large vertical stabilizer was added behind the intake as well as behind the canopy. They're very thick and structurally reinforced too. This provided basically a contact point with the target aircraft without damaging the prop, which was a huge factor of the design. Lastly, a small roll cage-like structure was added for extra reinforcement along the top of the airframe. Theoretically, this would allow the aircraft to attach below, whether it be to the wing, the nose, or the tail. From here, the powerful control surface setup would allow the piloting team to forcefully maneuver the aircraft in order to divert its course. Actually, if you'll notice, there's a set of like miniature vertical stabilizers underneath the craft that's meant for control after you've hooked up. Because of all these really weird control points though, it kind of ended up looking like a shark at the end. But the idea is pretty simple. You attach to the aircraft, you flick a switch, and once that switch is flicked, your control surface scheme changes. Instead, you move over to the handheld controls that control the other vertical stabilizer setups. That way, based on your connection point of the aircraft, you can actually like roll, let's say, to the left, and if you're on the right wing, all of your control surfaces will move to give you extra lift. That's also why the miniature control surfaces were placed closer to under the wing. But this ended up kind of making the plane look like a shark. And you know what? I dig it. So because of that, I also added, when I was decorating the aircraft, a shark nose to it, or a shark face on it. Lastly, the intake is mounted on top of the aircraft behind the propeller where it feeds into the turbine. A diverter deals with the boundary layer from the fuselage, while the counter-rotating propeller setup feeds air into the intake at higher alpha. Although it is important to note that due to our operation speed and turbine parameters, that doesn't really matter. We'll have an inlet screen and perhaps an inlet diverter in case stuff gets inside the intake, but otherwise we're not super concerned with too turbulent air like a regular jet would be. This is because we don't really rely on high-speed air for any power to our turbine, nor do we care that much about transonic performance, since it is, you know, an early 60s turboprop before jets are even really a thing. So the typical turboprop inlet screen and whatnot will do just fine. But that's my rant about turbines for today, and a lot of constant rambling I've done. So with our reinforced airframe, our two 27mm parachute launchers, low velocity, low rate of fire, harpoon launcher, airframe optimizations, reinforcements, propeller protections, docking cage, a primitive cockpit, a lot of off-camera airframe improvements, sorry about that guys, we were just about done. After some nice touch-up paint, roundels, and even a little shark face on the front, we were ready. It was time to fly out. God, I gotta stop saying that. Alright guys, I time-lapsed the first little bit of this because I was lazy and it would take a while to chase them down. Essentially our plan is pretty simple. Once again, we are kind of imagining everything because we don't really have a drug smuggling aircraft or a larger aircraft or multiplayer or a formation or just about any of that stuff. So we're just more or less going to chase down a target drone and try and knock him out of the sky gently with our parachute cannons. You know, make sure they work properly and all that. I do go live a little bit later, but for now, you're gonna have to deal with time-lapse mess here. Also, you know what? Before this video, I was playing around a little bit with a voice changer, right? So my voice sounds horrid because I accidentally left it on, because you see, I thought when I shut off my computer, it's a voice mod by the way, I thought when I shut off my computer that would be it would be done, and then I forgot about it. So when I turned it back on, the voice changer automatically activated, and so did voice mod. Not very happy about that. But for live Messier later, you're going to hear him with a very, very, very high-pitched Alvin and the Chipmunks style voice. So prepare for that. It's going to sound incredibly stupid, but that's alright. Anyways, you can see here we are in fact catching up to that target drone slowly but surely. That's because in terms of technology, that target drone is way ahead of this thing. And that wouldn't really be realistic. Chances are the drug smuggling planes we're chasing would maybe have a 200 or 300 mile an hour top speed at maximum, not going like 500 like that thing is. Or like the high 400s, I have no clue. So it takes us a while to chase it down, but we eventually get there, and then we try to hit him with our low velocity, low RPM parachute cannons, which proves to be a problem. Well, back to live Messier. I'll hand it over to live Alvin and the Chipmunks Messier. That's actually my real voice, guys. I'm just using a voice changer right now. Take it away, live Messier.
Alright guys, live Messier is back because I'm within 1.8 kilometers of the guy. Hey, I'm always close enough to take a shot. Hold on. I have tracers for all my rounds because they're like really low velocity. and really inaccurate parachute cannons to hopefully safely take him down over the ocean. Then we can arrest him. Then he can be imprisoned for his crimes, and the day is saved, and nobody dies. So let's see if I can even hit him here. Also, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm flying him, as I refer to it. Oh. Ah. Right. So, the parachute cannon just blew him up. You know, I mean, that works too, right? I mean, he's a drug smuggler. I'm sure nobody cares about his life, you know. Family probably disowned him at a young age, and he's been working for the cartel the whole time, so I'm sure no one will miss him. However, he is dead. That is our fault. Oopsies. Your Honor, my client would like to plead oopsie daisies. Well, as I was saying earlier, I guess, before, you know, I killed him and I chased him 128 kilometers and just murdered him over the ocean. But if you hit F2, there is a mouse flight in a Flyout, and I just call it War Thunder mode. What is that noise? What am I, huh? He got really loud before he hit the ocean. Ah, that's a little sound bug. Interesting. But yeah, you get mouse aim mode in this game, or War Thunder mode. So that's mission successful, so now all we gotta do is fly home. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.